Hello and welcome to Sunrise Daily, another brilliant week. It's Easter Monday, right?
Apparently.
So, welcome to Sunrise Daily today.
Yes, happy Easter Monday. You're welcome. I am Karadoki Kelu.
Well, naturally, we would like to begin with the latest cases. We have 5 new cases as at last night, 9:10 p.m. Of course, there have been a number of cases reported over the weekend, but the latest was that of 5 new cases confirmed yesterday, bringing the numbers to 323 as at this moment, and 85 people have been discharged gratifyingly, and 10 deaths have been recorded so far.
Apparently, and if you see that discharge, it means that about 1 out of 4, thereabouts, 1 out of 4 people have been discharged so far during the course of this pandemic in Nigeria. Let's take you through the state-by-state breakdown and see what we have now. There you see the confirmation. Lagos still number 1 on that infamous list with 176. Just to say that, Lagos State alone has, more cases than all the other states combined together. FCT 56, and if you take a look at what we recorded yesterday, that's the lowest for Lagos in this past week. Just 2. I mean, we've had 10, 13, 15 for Lagos, but we recorded just 2 yesterday. So is that an indication of something, some good news? Well, we'll wait for the authorities to give us, that insight. And you see FCT with 56, Osun with 20, Edo 12, and just over the weekend, Kano joined that list. Kano recorded its first COVID-19 case. So Kano is at the bottom of that list with 1 case. You see some other states that recorded 1. By the way, Benue has been on 1 case for as long as I can remember. Benue, and you see Katsina added just a few more cases over the weekend. So that's pretty much the breakdown. You see Oyo with 11, Ogun State with 7, and you see that this is majorly around the southern part of the country. The southern part has seen a lot of COVID-19 cases. In fact, majority of COVID-19 cases are in the southern part. So that's a breakdown by states across the country, what we have right now as it concerns COVID-19 in the country. But as we are having this, don't forget also we have Lassa fever. Which is a big deal here in Nigeria. We've had lots of deaths, in fact, almost 200 deaths, I believe, of Lassa fever as at the last count. So while we're, of course, dealing with COVID-19 and taking measures, it's also important to keep our eyes on Lassa fever, which is affecting a lot of people and also killing people in the country.
Talking about killing people, I remember the conversation we had with the president of the Resident Doctors Association, and he talked about the fact that, some of their members are dying due to occurrences of Lassa fever and all of that. So this period of our lives, it's definitely a lot of pressure on health workers, and if there is any kudos to give to them, we are saying thank you for the sacrifices that you're making. We're saying we are grateful that you decided to choose this course of action, this course of profession in your lives. And we can only pray that God himself will continue to protect you, especially at this time. You're making a lot of sacrifices, pretty much. Of course, the season of Easter is about sacrifice. And so we are really, really grateful to all of you for all the sacrifices that you are making. All health workers across board. Thank you for the sacrifices you're making. And talking about the season, you also remember that we talked about today being Easter Monday. Many people alive, maybe about 99% of people alive right now would wonder, we've never had this kind of Easter.
I had I think a 10-year-old saying in all her life she had never witnessed, an Easter like this. Well, on one hand, 10 years, just a few. But you take a look at people that have been around for a long time, except during war, which people are even saying it wasn't as dire as this. They've never experienced this. I know that Easter Monday is a time you prepare for picnics. You have your package that you take to Galilee in Code, because, this is when Jesus met his disciples in Galilee. So, Christians all over the world take this time, to share food, share some time, play games with friends and family. So I remember always looking forward to Easter Monday, because on one hand, you get a lot of food, you get to play games, have some form of interaction with friends and family, invite people over to get food. But, it's kind of different this time around. But I want to say that I still believe the Spirit is still in the air. The fact that you can't reach people physically, yes, there's social distancing, even though they're saying, let's change it to physical distancing and not social distancing. But the point is, the spirit is still in the air, the spirit of sacrifice, the spirit of sharing. I mean, these are things we should imbibe. I don't want us to say because there's the pandemic outside, then we just, move away from the spirit of a season. Yes, the playgrounds and, all the fun spots might be deserted, but what
They are deserted.
Yeah, they are deserted. But the fact is that we shouldn't, take away from the season, the spirit of sharing, of sacrifice. We should look around and see that we can help people, call people. This is a time people are in need of, not just food. Yes, food is basic, but then, that social interaction. This is a time to reach out to people. How are you doing? I mean, this is not a sight you'll see on a normal Easter Sunday across this fun spot. I mean, take a look at the background. I mean, look at the road. But importantly, the spirit of sharing, of sacrifice, and the hope, the joy that Jesus gives is in the air, and that is what we shall share during the season.
No, the way the whole season so far has been celebrated in the north, all over the place, one wonders the kind of mood that's, in so many homes, so many worship centers. There are many stand-up reports. Okay, look, this is something that happened in the north. Because the number of people still
this is in Lagos, I believe.
Okay,
this was in Lagos just yesterday.
Okay, so of course you can see it's very scanty. It's just to keep the tradition going in certain quarters and all of that. But then gratifying also is the fact that a significant number of people decided they were going to celebrate Easter by worshiping online.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that many people decided that they were going to do. This is one church that it was all under lock and key. But a significant number of people, including the governor of Lagos State, of course, the pictures were all over the place, that he celebrated. He had the Easter Sunday service online. That's it right there. And this is the service that he saw online and he joined in the virtual space.
I know we've talked about how this will change the world of works for life, actually, not just for the short term. People are saying this pandemic will change life as we know it, work, our relationship with people. But then, of course, it's also changing the mode of worship. People are switching to online services. And, that way, a lot of people get to attend more online churches in quotes. So you just pause this and flip to the next one and see what's happening, and you flip back and forth. But it's important to know that people are, abiding by these rules and regulations that the government has put out. I see across, different countries, by the way, I should say, where people still flout these orders. But from the pictures we're seeing, I'd like to commend Nigerians, really, because this was going to be a very tricky one. We know how important religion is to, to the country, to, the citizens of a country. So it was going to be a tough one, but I'd like to commend Nigerians, really, for staying back at home, obeying the rules and regulations. You see even religious leaders coming out to say, yes, we know you want to come to church, we know you want to come to the mosque to worship, but for this period, stay at home. Okay, the virus does not move, as they say. It is people that move the virus. So really, I'd like to commend Nigerians for their sacrifice at this time.
Online services have definitely challenged so many traditions that a number of people have had over time. Well, this is some experience that we gathered for you. Just take a look. You may have seen it. Want to look at it again.
It's Easter. But the usual buzz of churches filled with faithful celebrating the resurrection of Christ is now replaced by online worship in accordance with the social distance order. The household of the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, is connecting to the internet for word on the joy of Easter.
Let us pray.
The General Overseer of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Pastor Enoch Adeboye, calls on Christians not to be careless during this period, but to use the forced lockdown to draw closer to God.
There are some of us who don't know how to slow down, and God himself has to apply the brakes. And I can assure you, it's been a wonderful time. Alone in the presence of the Almighty God, not jumping up and down, just relaxing, knowing fully well that tomorrow will be all right. I want to assure you, your tomorrow also will be all right.
In his sermon, the senior pastor of the Covenant Christian Center, Bojo Yemade, encourages Christians to connect with God through scriptures that will lift their spirits in times of despair.
Sit down with the book of Psalms, read, reread it, go through it until you come in contact with scriptures in that book of Psalms that speak about what you are feeling at that particular moment.
Pastor Tunde Bakare of the Citadel Church teaches on the need for Christians to know God more than ever before.
You cannot come into God's presence with gladness and singing except you have both or you have cause so to do. I pray that Almighty God, in the name of Jesus, we make you and your household, we give you cause to sing songs of praise, even as it turns your sorrow into joy, your tears into laughter, and your money into dancing, in Jesus' mighty name.
The sermons by the men of God show that reaching out during trying times is not a problem, especially when the message of resurrection and victory are the subjects of Christians. For the faithful, it's all about connecting to the internet and the Word. Orolu Ashonibare, Channels Television News.
So this is how the papers reflect what happened all of yesterday. You want to begin with the Guardian newspaper this morning that leads with WHO and CDC warn against easing COVID-19 lockdowns. That's the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. 15 firms race for cure may okay drugs by June. Wow. No positive result is absolute. Expert warns how coronavirus is impeding fight against other diseases. You know, we referenced this last one just a little while ago. While it's the Lassa fever outbreak itself is a lot deadlier, some would say, than coronavirus disease itself. But here we are talking a lot more about the coronavirus disease than even the Lassa fever that we mentioned earlier.
Absolutely, and it's important to, like we said, always keep our eyes on the ball. And it's good that the NCDC gives an update on Lassa fever, saying, you know, we know we're fighting COVID-19, but take a look at what's happening with Lassa fever. We need to also focus on that.
And not just to focus on it, to also be aware of what we need to do to avoid that kind of thing happening again and again. You may want to check online now, what is this whole thing about Lassa fever and how to avoid it, because it's very easy to take it for granted that this is even happening. So, but that's what's on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. And isn't it a little troubling, Kay, that it says no positive result is absolute? Now that should give some
interesting. I mean, that's perhaps why they have to repeat some of these tests
over and over.
They talk about the viral load. It's a lot, but we'll look into that today. Definitely.
Okay. All right. So under that story, confusion over planned 104 billion naira free electricity for Nigerians. I think the chicken is coming to roost on this free electricity that's been in the news all of last week. Disco's back move. Genco's yet to decide. Now, why don't I blame them? Because they're the ones that have to spend the money.
Speaking of that chicken coming to roost, we want to see the egg at least. Let's see something.
Okay, so 90% Nigerians may miss out in the scheme. Oof. Why?
Big question there.
Find the story, continue on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Of course, right under that one, you find that darkened space there is the editorial of the Guardian newspaper today, tagged 5G, COVID-19 and conspiracy theories. Find that on page 12.
That's going to be a hit, really.
Well, it's been a hit over time, so let's see how much heat this can also
but it's important to pay attention to the facts. This is a time for people to be mischievous and just peddle different forms of conspiracy. I understand people enjoy that. Let's leave that to the realm of fiction and novel. This is real life, so let's focus on the facts and ensure that we push these facts.
What if real life is not salacious. That's what people want to consume.
That's why you buy novels and stuff. You can indulge in novels and movies. But
of course, you see those two pictures there. Pope Francis celebrating the Eucharist during Easter Sunday Mass, and of course the Governor of Lagos State on the top mentioned earlier. The Guardian newspaper has sports on the back page. Omokaro worried NFF raw umpires could affect Super Eagles. Find the details of that on the back page. Guardian Sports this morning, you see Odion Igalo and Victor Osimhen there. And right beside that one, sports journalists hail Akwa Ibom for extending COVID-19 palliatives to members. That's gratifying. And then Valley beats cancer after 17 months chemotherapy. That's the Guardian newspaper this morning.
let's take you through the Vanguard. The big story, COVID-19. NCDC under fire over tests. Slow response. That's a big one right there. You see the writer, low tests per population. Just 5,000 of Nigeria's near 200 million tested so far. Just to put that in context, 5,000 of a total 200 million means that's 0.0025% of a total population has been tested so far. You can imagine the gap. We're talking about countries doing 1 million tests. I mean, countries with this kind of population doing 1 million tests, 2 million tests, but here we are with 5,000 tests. We understand the fact that, the resources might not be available, but is that really an excuse? Big question there. NCDC's lines often don't connect. Samples not taken for days. And you see this one, only symptomatic patients being tested. Aggressive testing needed. That's coming from Tomori. It appears we need to change, our approach to this testing, really.
Well, but back up to the one where you said that the numbers, the lines are not connecting.
Oh, yeah,
this is a little scary.
NCDC's lines often don't connect, and we understand that. Reports have it that a lot of people bombard these lines, and I think that the commissioner for health in Lagos was saying something about, a lot of these calls they get are prank calls. Calls that are not necessary. So the big, I think the rule should be, I know it might not be enforced that much, but for people out there, if you don't have a good reason to call the NCDC lines, there's no point calling it. No point to call to test and see if it is working, because at that point, someone who needs to make that call might be on the other end trying to get through, but you are testing and you don't give the person the opportunity.
And I think that we cannot emphasize that too much, because we have a knack for not, trusting anything that's in the system. That's understandable. But at this time, I think it's very, very important for us to underscore the fact that we need to keep those lines free, so that this lockdown can be over sooner. Because the more we're able to conduct this testing, the more people government is able to pull into this testing bracket, test, find out whether or not these things exist. I think the better it will be for all of us at the time. That's is it forecast that we'll have so number of cases in Lagos by today is 13, that by tomorrow 14th we should have something way above 600. Right now we have so much less than that, so that is a gratifying thing. So but then, just as you have often said, it is necessary for us to ramp up testing as frequently as possible, so that, because the more we do that, the safer we would feel that we have this number of tests, this number of cases, or so less number of cases. But a situation where people are not able to get across to even know whether or not they will be tested, I think that's troubling.
So let's show you what's happening in other African countries. Still on that story, South Africa carries out 75,000 tests. Ghana, 37,400 tests. That explains maybe why Ghana has recorded way more cases than Nigeria. Egypt, 25,000 tests. Nigeria, 5,000. That's the last rider for that story. And you see the big picture on the front page shows unusual Easter, shows Easter lockdown. The Cathedral of St. Michael in Kaduna, empty as worshippers stayed away for Easter Sunday service. I'm sure they probably did this online. So yeah, the physical structure might be empty, but the church, which is not physical, was most likely not empty.
Do you mind me going back to those figures that you quoted of those other African countries? I think that should give the Nigerian system authorities some serious concern. Where other quote-unquote smaller countries are, conducting so many tests in multiples of thousands, and we've only been able to do this for such a population, especially of Lagos. I mean, shouldn't that, I'm pretty sure that should give us some concern.
Absolutely, and that perhaps explains why South Africa will have 2,173 cases, because they've carried out 75,000 tests. You see Ghana also with way more cases than Nigeria. I think Ghana at this point has over 400 cases, or thereabouts.
We saw with about some 20-something thousand tests.
566 cases Ghana has with 37,400 tests. But let's move on from that story. We would look forward to what the NCDC and the government has to say about ramping up tests. You see this one on top of the nameplate. Lagos discharges 5 more patients. The good news, I mean, the silver lining for all of this. And why federal government's digitizing payment to the poor. That's coming from Omar Farouk. It's on page 8. Imbibe values of Christ. Buhari, governors, others tell Christians on Easter. And you see this one from IBB saying, don't play politics with COVID-19. IBB begs politicians. That's really important. It's on page 13. You know, when it comes to begging, it shows you how much important that is. Really serious. Let's take a look at sports. I mean, COVID-19 has not really stopped sports entirely. See that big story there? Osimhen can become one of the best strikers in the world. Yes to that. It's coming from Ayegbeni, also another striker, a Nigerian striker, former Nigerian international. Ayegbeni believes that Osimhen can be the best in the world. And you see, without Ndidi, Leicester struggle. It's coming from Robert. And another striker makes the news, another Nigerian striker, saying clubs will rush Igalo after loan spell at Manchester United. I mean, I'm sure a lot of players cannot wait for the COVID-19 to subside so play can resume. I mean, a lot of them have to take pay cuts right now. A lot of, players, managers, and, others have to take pay cuts. So I'm sure they're looking forward to this ending, and so they can return to football and start earning that.
The normal.
The normal. But it's also important to say that at this time is, where we should sacrifice a lot. We should not be afraid to sacrifice. And this one from Igalo also, Ronaldo better than Messi. Quite, controversial statement. This is not something you want to get into right now, but Igalo said it. I know that the Twitter boys and girls who are fans of football will get on this. So yeah, that's the Vanguard for this morning.
And that's the much we can take from the papers this morning. We're back in a moment to take on the issues for the day. Stay with us.